Hi guys, Kirk and family here with Kirk, Giordano Plastering. Today I want to show you guys how to match a certain finish. And because Jay just told me, whoa Dad, you know we're approaching 8 million views, I thought that was kind of cool. You can see what goes on behind the camera. I've got 3 sons. Carl's here. He knows how to use these cameras. Dan does. Jay does the majority of this stuff. So we can bring this to you guys and put us out of business. Not kidding. Anyway, guys, what we have here, look at this. Can you get a close-up, Jay, of this particular finish? This particular finish is done 2 different ways. All you professionals probably look at it and say, man, I could match that. I'm going to match it with a hard rubber float. And how many kinds of floats are there? Guys, there's cork floats. I don't like them, but I have them. There are a lot of plastic floats. Most of these are from the UK. In fact, I brought one back from the UK about 20 years ago. I was showing my buddy. He says, dude, that's nothing new. And he pulls one out. And anyway, what I like are these floats right here. These are hard rubber floats. What do hard rubber floats usually do? They compact the mud. After you brown it out, you compact it. When I worked union, we'd do this 8 hours a day. That's all one person or 2 people did behind a gun. Just 8 hours, day after day, week after week, month after month. You just float. See the difference in size here? Generally, guys, I buy a whole float like this. It's a bigger one. It's a lot easier to use. I take it, one of the guys I hired at one time brought this little crappy, useless one and took my good one, but part of being a big-time contractor. Anyway, so she says, well, gee, Kirk, on this particular finish here, and there's a whole bunch of patches around the house that I won't show you how they tried to match it and couldn't, but I will show you how to match it. First of all, we brown this out. What do we got here? See that, guys? Now, why am I showing you this? Because this wall right here is still somewhat wet. So what we're going to use is skill. I don't want to use muscle. If I'm using muscle, then I'm going to be tired. So, okay. Now, a lot of times you'll see me float, and I'll take a green sponge float. Now, green sponge float brings the aggregate out. Say, sand is aggregate. If I were to sponge float this, now, you see how all that sand is coming out because I have water in there. There's 2 ways to do that. I can take the water out of this float, like say, for example, I take it, I'm just going to show you something for example. What I'm doing is I'm taking the water out of this float. Okay, now, once I get all the water out of this float, and yeah, I could tap it on this surface here and just, somebody's bound to say, hey, you messed up their wall. I just take a water hose and hit that. But the idea is get all of the moisture out. And now when you have a dry float, I can match this right here too with a dry float. What you do is you just take it and you see how dry it is. Now notice that matches this right here. In fact, I could fix my own screw up right here. And as you give it some time, you can go right back over it. However, there's an easier way to do that. Hard rubber float, like I'll take my float here, and the surface I just did, I'm going to float it. Now, I remember my youngest son trying this, Dan, and he was doing it, and what he kept doing is, so I don't have to look at the wall. I can feel the wall. You just walk. What you guys don't see is as I'm floating this wall, say for example, what I'm doing is I'm lifting it. You can't hardly see it because it's going fast. Well, my son said, Dad, I'm jacking it up. I can't do this. This is about 6 years ago. I said, that's because you got all those trophies for that snowboard and stuff, but it's the same technique. And what he was doing was this. He was digging in, or when he was coming like this and digging in, but what you're doing is you got to lift it. And you can't see it, but it's being lifted and dropped. That's what takes that out right there. Now, to go back to what I wanted to show you, she says, well, gee, and she showed me about 6 spots on the house, and every one of them was a pretty bad match, but we're not going to go there and show you somebody else's work. What I generally do when I float my work, my new work into the existing is I'll float into it, and I always explain why. This time I'm going to float the existing into my new, and the reason is because this is so fine right here, I've got to compress my own work. Watch. Okay. So now I'm taking my work And there's a lot of gravel in mine. See, this got rocks, it's supposed to be oldie sand, but it's still got a lot of pebbles. I can see them all. And what we're doing is we're compressing the pebbles so that when this is painted, they match. Can't have a bunch of pebbles. I was going to show you, but instead of that, I'll just keep going. Now, again, this is stuff you don't have to look at, guys. Once you get good at this, the idea is just to float it, use the whole float. Not the tip, not the heel, but the whole float. So you're coming in and you're floating it. It always helps to watch, but you don't have to, because this is all pretty much you're just feeling the wall and you're pushing all the sand into it. You don't want any grit showing. So oftentimes what I'll do is, after I get everything where I want it, if it's still not as tight, here's a tip, guys. I don't want to throw too many things at you at once, but if it's still not too tight, you could always take a sponge float now with a little bit of water and hit it right here, and that even gets the joint tighter. But if you don't know what you're doing, you can pull the aggregate out or the sand and make it worse. So anyway, this video was about using a hard rubber float, which again we use to compact everything. We do a brown coat, then we float it all. We float it so that it compacts everything, compresses it. That way when we come to do a color coat, we are on the money. There's less likely to be cracks if you do this. And notice too, guys, I'm doing big circles. You don't have to look, guys, just big circles, and you're using some muscle here. It looks like I'm just touching the wall, but I'm actually going about 10 pounds, pushing it in. Our finish has got to match when it's painted. Not like the house next to me, but we're not going to show that. Anyway, here's the last tip, guys. Say we had a little drop out here because we're pretty thick. What we do is compress, and lift that float up. And another thing I like to tell my guys or my sons is, guys, when we're doing this and say we have a weep screed here, take our hand and clean that edge and feather that in too, because if you have a whole bunch of clinkers at the end of the job, man, that just takes all the beauty out of the work. And folks, I know if it were me, I'd look at it and say, hey guys, what's all the crumbs hanging down? So make sure as you do it, you take your float, go underneath, clean that stuff up too. Anyway, you guys see where we're going with this. This is a tip on how to float in your joints when you want it tight. And I get a lot of calls from even stucco contractors. They say, dude, you show a lot of stuff. I get some new guys. I tell them sometimes, watch your channel, because if they're really good and they're really on the ball, you make them even that much better. Anyway, since we're approaching that 9 million views, which I think is kind of cool, Jason and I, Carl, and even Lou, thank you for watching, and as usual, we'll see you guys on the next one. Once again, folks, we thank you for watching, and I really enjoy all your comments.
If you guys like this video, please click the like button down below, and also if you enjoy what we do, subscribe to our channel so we can keep making these videos for you.
My name is Kirk.
And Jay.
We thank you for watching, and from the entire Giordano family, we'll see you on the next one.